Eidos-Montréal and Eidos-Sherbrooke shifting to the 4-day work week. This is big news in the games industry and for the people that work on the games themselves. 4-day work weeks, what is happening? Is the dam breaking? Are we finally saying, oh, we can have a little extra time to, live our life?
I can tell by your voice that, you're just holding back this hysterical, confusion and laughter, just, all wrapped up into, will I feel relief in my lifetime, in my career?
Don't predict my laughter. But yeah, man, this is wild. Great for them. I remember reading initially that, there were some reports, maybe a tweet or two, something like that, that this may not have applied to their QA team, but they have followed up with Kotaku to say that, in fact, everyone that is working at those studios full-time will get their Friday off, which is, really sweet. Anyway, big picture, we're going from a 40-hour work week for those studios to a 32, and their approach, according to the article, and I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, is rather than condensing this 40-hour work week to 32, they're going to rethink and kind of reconfigure how they approach doing the work. And so we'll see what that means, but definitely it seems like there is this push in a new direction, and one that a lot of people have been craving for a long time. I don't know if this might be kind of the flint and tinder in the middle of a very dry forest, or you know what I mean? Is this going to catch on and just everyone's going to start doing it, just similar to work from home, given the year inside, as some nations like to call it? What do you think, Ryan?
Right. Yeah. Well, before we get into the possible social impact of this one studio's making this decision, can you give us some context? What games have they made? How big of a studio are they? Is this unprecedented? Are there other examples of similar studios doing this kind of
good
transition?
Good questions. So Eidos-Montréal, I believe, is a multi-100-person studio. It's definitely over 100 people, that studio. Eidos-Sherbrooke, I imagine, is about the same size. It's Square Enix. Right, Square Enix owns Eidos, and so, when you think Square Enix, you think Final Fantasy, Kingdom Hearts. I really don't know what else you would think besides those two properties, because they make so much money, and Kingdom Hearts is obviously tied in with Disney. And so just to give a little more context to the developers specifically, Eidos-Montréal is currently developing the Marvel Guardians of the Galaxy video game. And before that, they made the Deus Ex reboots with Deus Ex Mankind Divided and Deus Ex Human Revolution.
I'm reminded of the book Tribe by Sebastian Junger. Maybe Junger. I'm pretty sure it would be pronounced with the Y, but who knows? In that,
what was this book
it's
about?
It's nonfiction. He's exploring social relations, and I remember one specific part of the book, Tribe, which I read several years ago at this point. In it, Sebastian Junger says that people needed to forage, hunter-gatherer societies needed to work for something like 15 hours a week in order to ensure that they had all everything that they needed to survive, right? And how we are acclimated to a 40-hour work week, and we don't think about hunter-gatherer societies as having more time for recreation. We think that because we have all this technology that we're obviously living more cushy lives, and in some ways we are. I mean, we have hospitals, right? We have a lot of...
We have toilets.
We have toilets. We have a lot of technology going into pillows. It's finding the exact amount of the thread count of your pillow and how many down feathers or, whatever.
Our technology has gotten so good. I used to just hope to watch Fairly Odd Parents on my Game Boy Advance, which could only hold one half episode of Fairly Odd Parents. And now I could watch the entire Sopranos on my phone wherever I want.
Right. I mean, exactly. And to some extent, it's do we really need these things that we've come to feel like we need? These things are so luxurious. And if should you work 60 hours a week so that you have a higher bar of enjoyment, or more rich experiences in the slender time that you have, you're like your remaining free time. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the studio, I mean, this is different because 32 hours, they're still doing regular, like the kind of work that you would be doing. It's just a better atmosphere, I guess, for it. Or
it's interesting you say free time, and I think that's actually a good way to put it, because this is giving the employees more freedom, right? I look forward to the weekend, but I sort of hate that I look forward to the weekend because it devalues the week itself. And Saturday, Sunday is just such a shit weekend. Like, I am saying that in the context of, like, you're working Friday and then you're like, oh, I got to, like, make the most of my weekend, and you try to do whatever you can do on Friday night. That then eats into your enjoyment or whatever on Saturday, and Sunday is just a full wash. Like, Sunday, you know, you're prepping. You can't get, like, fully comfortable and relaxed. You got to, like, mentally and or physically prep for, like, work the next day and stuff. So getting a whole extra day now makes a weekend actually feel like a weekend, if that makes any sense. Like, it feels like an actual 2 days off.
As much as I want, like, more of my own free time, and I see what you're saying, if everyone switched to a 4-day work week, right, would we then be craving the 3-day work week? Like, I'm wondering if this is like hedonic treadmill energy, where
What's
it's
hedonic
like
treadmill?
Hedonic treadmill is like the idea that, you know, once you reach a certain quality of life, you eventually get used to it and you adapt to it. So, you know, if let's say you're hit by a car and you can no longer move, you know, you'll kind of return to a certain baseline of happiness after you've initially adjusted to the huge change in quality of life, let's say. You'll be basically as happy as you were before. You know, if you're a very grumpy person and something terrible happens to you, you'll continue to be very grumpy shortly after the initial event. If you're a very happy person and very positive, then you'll continue to be positive, very likely. And that works in the opposite direction too, not just with negative experiences, right, but with positive experiences. So it's like, I really want, you know, the newest PlayStation. And it's like, I get that. And it's like, you're not coasting on the high of getting that PlayStation, you know, for several months. You know, you get it, and then it becomes kind of like incorporated into your daily experience and your expectations. So it's kind of that rubber banding effect of like returning to, you know, it's like when you adjust a treadmill, right? If we think about it physically, like if you're at the gym and you're going 4 miles per hour, you know, you're keeping pace with yourself, and then you increase that, and eventually it's like, whoa, this is fast, and then it's like, nah, I can do this. This is, you know, still within my range. I just had to adapt to it.
Oh, okay, cool.
But so I'm saying, to bring that back, I'm saying, like, perhaps the 4-day work week, you know, if we all had it, we would all be like, 4-day work week, this is terrible. We're, you know, selling out to our, you know, corporate offices, and we shouldn't be working 4 days a week. Like, we really can't have a fully enjoyable weekend unless we're only working 3 days a week, and, you know, we can have 4 days where we can fully enjoy. And that may seem really silly right now, but that's because the idea of a 3-day work week seems absolutely unattainable because we are expected to work 5 days at this point.
I think from the other side of the spectrum there, it's asking, like, do we really need to work 5 days to get that output? Or are we just kind of like being excessive now? Because definitely when it gets to the point of like crunching in game development, when you're working longer than the 40 hours, there's like a spectrum of it. I think we talked about it in the past, but like working more than 40 hours is like overtime, and it certainly gets into crunch when you're doing that repeatedly and doing that for like 50 to 60.
The 40 hours is arbitrary, and 32 hours is also arbitrary.
Yes.
And at this point, it's so that we can slice up benefits really easily. You do get health insurance if you work above X number of hours. Like, we need that line so that companies can figure out what they're paying for and what they're expecting their employees
part-time
to pay for.
versus full-time employees, right?
Right.
You're saying?
It's essentially a bureaucratic decision, you know, or like the framing of it is, you know, the structure is like for bureaucratic reasons. And then we have it standardized across, you know, the country to some extent. Obviously, some places consider 30 hours full time, some 35, some 40. But, you know, even though that's like a fairly small variation, the expectations of what it means to be a full time employee are going to be consistent, you know, for the most part. Some vacation time, blah, 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 you know?
Yeah. I think it's also worth mentioning, if we haven't already said it, that like the salaries, at least how it's been reported so far, like there's no pay cuts going on for this like shift from 40 to 32 hour work weeks. Everyone's like benefits and pay is like staying the same. They are just closing their studio doors on Fridays now. with like the intention of like nobody working.
That is pretty remarkable if they really are not going to change people's salaries or their time off or their benefits.
It's a tremendous step in the right direction. I think it's also a very bold step in the right direction. And really what is going to be the reckoning for this shift is going to be the next 1 to like 1.5 releases. I'm guessing that like Guardians is going to have like some amount of sustained post-launch life that they will want to, tend to, and seeing how that output does actually come out, like whether it meets the quality bar they want, and actually probably most importantly, does it get the return that it's supposed to have? So what I'm really getting at is like, how much money is Square Enix going to make off of Eidos-Montreal's next game? And is the quality of that game going to meet expectations for either what they're used to or what they were expecting given the shift in the work week? So since I just actually found out that Guardians is coming out on like October 26th, I think that the shift that more recently happened is actually going to be counterweighed with whatever the follow-up title is. Or if they are doing a whole bunch of like post-launch DLC for Guardians, they're going to be looking at the quality of that content and the ROI, the return on investment for, giving their employees the 32-hour work week, and, how much money did they get back from it when the game came out.
See, you keep approaching this from the perspective of their output will be better. Perhaps they'll have. I'm going to make assumptions now.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying like their output will not be harmed. Like, I don't think necessarily
time is the only factor here, isn't it? Like, are you expecting creativity to be like to swell because of this, or are you expecting the same grade of content just taking, like much. You need 5 weeks, right? Instead of 4 weeks to do something, right? To do this.
I think people, and maybe this is just me being a little too optimistic, but like, I think people would come into their creative spaces more energized, more generally positive, and like be able to output what they would already output, because even though there is less time, you're kind of like maybe able to better get into the flow of things, and or just like potentially prioritize that time better. I don't know if that's the word I'm actually looking for.
You're kind of talking about morale here, right? Like if morale is high, people will have a better attitude in meetings potentially. They'll be happier to be at work because they don't feel like they're chained to their desk and that they have to be here like,
they
5
may be
full
more
days
driven to like do a super cool thing on like a level or a song they're working on for the game. Yeah.
Right, but if I told you that you could have a 4-day work week, but you still had the exact same amount of time to get things done, I would basically be crunching you the 32 hours that you were at work and saying, hey, take Friday off because you crunched so hard Monday through Thursday, right? So I feel like there would have to be an adjustment of deadlines in order for this to continue to be a fair policy. If you're expecting the same amount of content in the same, in a month, let's say, in a year, over the course of a year, if you expect, 50 less days for people working.
I think you're looking at it in a very sort of, to some extent, I think you're looking at it in a kind of rigid manner. Like it almost sounds like you're looking at it from a, like, we're making steel beams in a factory and like 500 need to get done within the 40-hour work week. But it's not really like that. Like from a production standpoint, it's kind of like that, but like still the productions aren't like steel beams. The productions are these kind of technical canvases that have to be painted in. What I'm saying is that like, it's more like, hey, paint in this canvas over this much time and make it as like beautiful and cool as you can. Not so much construct 500 steel beams by like this date. Does that make any sense?
It does, but I feel like it kind of counters stuff that we've talked about before. Like, I mean, we know like when something's in an alpha phase, and we know we have a projected deadline of when we need to have that product ready. So, it's like, to try to think about these business decisions, I step out of the world of like, let's think of this as a dynamic project that's, flowing, and I think about it more as like, well, when can we get this to the stage that it needs to be? And that's a very deadline structured kind of approach that I feel like these decisions are made with that in mind.
Very much so, yeah. Like the production team, and I'm sure at like the executive level, because that can greatly affect like the big cascading portfolio of titles that are upcoming. They are definitely looking at this long before it even trickles down to like rumors of it getting to, the people in the trenches putting the game together. And that's why I kind of, again, sort of center around, what's going to be our return on investment. Did we actually, get the same product? Did we get a worse product? If freaking wild case scenario, did we get a better product for doing this? I think it's very unlikely you'll get a better product, but I think it's like more likely that you will get a product of like similar quality / value than you would one that is like of less value.
Right. I see the like calculation that you're making. I think we could also look at this as like they're even more calculated, where it's like, we're not doing this for a human rights reason. We're doing this because it's good PR, and we can signal that like, oh, look at us. That would be the most cynical formulation I could think of. But then it could also be like, we don't care about return on investment. We want people to be treated fairly. We want them to be treated well. And we're living in an age where we shouldn't be expecting people to work 40 hours a week. We want people to enjoy their free time, regardless of how it affects the studio, right? And that's like a very idealistic approach. Do you entertain that possibility at all? That like the idealistic one?
That they're just doing it for the good of everyone, and that they think like we should all be moving to 4-day work weeks? Not really.
Yeah, like I don't really have any understanding of the economics of this. Like, as a person in society, I'm like, yeah, 4-day work week sounds awesome, but I don't know how that would actually affect our economy. I don't know if it would be good, in the long term. I don't understand enough about economics to be able to really evaluate whether I think that would be a wise decision for our society to take. There might be just a lot of consequences. But yeah, sure. Similarly, like, I don't know how this is going to affect the game. I imagine that there are going to be people who like see that their next game is going to get delayed, and they're going to be like, oh, what snowflakes? Like, why are these people getting a 4-day work week? I work 5 days a week. This, and like
right,
these people
yeah.
get to sit on their ass every Friday. They're just like a wide range of ways that people can receive this. But the part of it that feels most, magnetic to me is the idea that we're doing this to advance like human rights and liberty and those kinds of things. And for a company to make so many sacrifices, it feels very altruistic to me if it's not motivated by that return on investment or the good PR.
I think it's a very nice way to think about it. I would love to think about it that way, but I think I do lean towards more the cynical side, where this is like, at the highest level, it's a play for PR. If you say you're switching to a 4-day work week, that makes you so attractive to so many developers. And
you're immediately sold on the most cynical interpretation. Anything that keeps you saying corpos is like where what you're gonna gravitate toward.
Well, I mean, think about it, right? You catch more flies with honey than like if well, obviously we're the flies, like, sorry, game devs, but like, it's more likely to bring you like the high output creatives or the like really the really great support guys who like can facilitate things. I'm just saying, like, it attracts all sorts of very desirable employee types if you have more benefits than other places. And I guess one of the biggest benefits that a workplace can have is time.
Yes, this is a really good point that I hadn't considered. You're saying like they can attract the best devs across because they have like a package that is very competitive. It's like
there's
who doesn't
an
want to work
archetype.
4 days?
there's an archetype I'm not sure if you're familiar with, but there's like an archetype for programmers where it's like, here's the guy that just goes off in a corner, has like the long wild hair, like comes into work with the tattered jeans and like a black Metallica t-shirt, and then he sits there for like 3 days of the work week, something like that, ends up coding half the game because it's like no big deal to him. That type of person is definitely going to go to the 4-day work week place. It probably on one end will create a bit of a maybe a bottleneck or something for the people who have to interview and then like vet and go through the process of like looking through all these people. But yeah, it's gonna attract like so much talent to that studio. And I'm sure if other studios want to stay competitive, they will at least be thinking about how they can try this out. But I also don't know, since it's just one place, it's just one studio, two studios, Eidos-Montréal and Sherbrooke. It can't pull all the talent, right? Like, if we say there's an ocean of developers, right, and every studio is a lake, like a lake can only hold so many fish before everyone starts suffocating. And so I guess we'll have to see if this is like the crack in the dam that kind of breaks things rapidly, or if they will just hold out and be a test case for others to look at for a long time before they're willing to dance.